Hello. Sometimes when we play the Stonewall attack, they go after our light builder with their light squared bishop or knight, and so we have a few puzzles for you to solve. Let's
And again, the light square bishop we said is really, really important. The pawns are on dark, and the energy of the light is going to be huge. And the Stonewall is largely about light square energy from the pieces. Pawns on dark, piece on light. So, like discussing the bishop, if they take our bishop
pause
somehow,
pause for a few seconds. All right.
and if they take our bishop, the question is how do we take back? I think usually the natural way is to take with a queen. The problem then is that we really don't have our bishop, and we don't have any. We'll have if we just take a look at that.
We
Queen takes,
can
right?
take with the queen, and we're not worse here, but they're going to put a knight on e4.
Knight on e4, and we don't have any control light. If we notice, we have pawns on dark and a dark square bishop, which makes that a quote unquote bad bishop. But more importantly, more to the point, and more importantly, we don't have any light. We have no harmony. So if we go back,
We can rebuild light with c takes d3, and now this knight is restricted. We still have the e5 outpost, and this is running smooth because we now are having pressure on this backward pawn. Maybe we'll even exchange our bad bishop this way.
yeah. So again, we'll have a lot of pawns on light. Whenever you don't have a light square bishop, you're going to want to put pawns on light to have like bricks and to act as every pawn is even a tiny mini light bishop of its own. So I think we're I wouldn't say white's better here, but white is comfortable enough
Plays
to
easy enough,
feel comfortable.
and the main disadvantage
Yeah.
is now removed.
Okay.
So next puzzle, they take our bishop, of course.
So in this case, again, if we check knight b4, knight boy 4, the knight often hops in, and a lot of times students say, "Oh, what do I do? What do I do? I'm losing my bishop." And yeah, it's not the most comfortable. Of course, we'd be happy to keep the bishop and get our. We saw some beautiful smooth lines of leading to pure mates and crushing attacks. But we will lose the bishop sometimes, and if we do, we're going to try to replenish it. Again, when we lose a bishop,
We want to rebuild light.
come back, and rebuild it with pawns
And
acting as mini bishops as a light bishop of its own. That helps.
exactly. And okay, on to the third puzzle. It's the same idea. They've moved here before we played f4.
And we could have the student pause here for a moment. How do we take back? How to take back? The queen looks natural, but again, double pawns are good here because the pawn is on light, and it's like a mini light bishop.
Yes,
right?
let's discuss doubled pawns for a moment. Doubled pawns can be weak. They can get in each other's way, but doubled pawns are mainly weaknesses when they're isolated and on an open file. These are not isolated. They're still able to more or less protect each other, and the control over the e4 square is more important, especially when white plays f4. And I'm not too worried about any possible weakness because quite often there is a backward pawn on the open file. Here it's not backward per se, but still I would prefer white's position.
Yeah.
All right, on to the theory. d4, d5. We're going to be starting actually with knight f6, e3, e6. This isn't really so much about theory as aiming for setups. And structures. We're playing for bishop d3, knight d2, f4.
So again, yeah, the pawns are on dark. We're trying to follow that flow. Pawns on dark, pieces on light. And when we see e6, for one, I'll say this: e6 is a good sign. It's usually a good sign. This is a good rule of thumb to know e6 because it blocks his light square bishop. We're going to usually get a very smooth Stonewall. So that's a good little thing to keep in mind.
Sure, and when he says the pieces on light, the knight on g2 is controlling light. When the knight gets to e5, it is focusing on light squares. When the bishop's on d3, it's focusing on the light squares. And one of the reasons why e6 is so good for us to see in general is because in the Stonewall, a lot of the critical lines involve like an early bishop g4 or early bishop f5, and because it controls light squares, especially if we commit to an early f4. There are some cases we prefer not to, like we want to play bishop d3, knight d2, so that they commit first or something. If they play very accurately, they avoid committing. They get this early knight c6 in, and to prevent e5, we either have to commit to a collie with knight f3 or just play f4 and allow bishop
Yeah,
g4.
we'll have to see. I mean, again, it's really each move will go at a time. But bishop comes out, and then it's gonna depend. Each it's very important the move order. Yeah,
Yeah, if we played f4 here, then bishop f5 is annoying us. Now, after bishop d3, we go back to our position if they take us, but they don't have to. Like maybe e6 is kind of annoying.
yeah. Well, again, before putting pawns on dark, we're going to try and get harmony on light. So that's we don't we while the pawns on dark are important, we're not going to do that too early
The
usually.
pawns on dark are to support possible weaknesses so that we can eventually attack on light. So if we compromise light too early, then we defeat the whole point. So let's go to some variations, if you could call it that. This is more of a structure than variations. So like let's say b6.
B6. So B6 is trying to get the bishop out, and it's again the usual move would be knight to D2 here, but if we do that, then bishop comes to B7. If we maybe just show that for a moment,
Yeah.
knight D2, and then we want to play F4, but we can't. We lose G2. If we block with knight F3 and we protect the G pawn, the problem is we never do get F4. So it's a little bit, it's a little hokey pokey, and it gets in the monkey wrench in our dacha.
This is playable, but we want to get our typical structure so that we can apply similar middle game ideas and get some space. So after f4,
so again, so after b6, we just show back a move. After b6, we play f4 first, just to make sure to get our knight there in time. The move order right. So and then
This is kind of interesting because right now they actually have more control over the e4 square than we do.
Now we have knight f3 though. We get our structure, yeah. And yeah, he has e4, but
we can fight for it also. And so let's say c5, c3, d6 is an example variation. So I'm kind of curious. What about knight e4 here? Like let's say this, and then
again, he's trying to jump in the hole. Maybe allows you to say why e4 is a hole. What is that?
E4 is like a weak square. It's we weakened it by playing d4 and
no
f4.
Pawns. No pawns could protect it. That's what. On the one hand, the Stonewall is so strong on the dark. On the other hand, you have peace on light, but there is a hole. I would say the two most important squares in the Stonewall are e4 and e5. E5. We're going to just click a square to show the squares.
E5?
E5 and E4. E5 is going to be our outpost for the knight. Our knight's going to get there one day. E4 is a sensitive square, but I believe actually can be a weak square, but if played correctly, it can be a strong square. And that's actually the Stonewall. After years and years of thinking about it and variations and developing ideas and lines, E4 is the key to the Stonewall, to putting proper. And sometimes we'll see we push e4, we push the pawn.
Right, because they didn't blockade us enough. Like they didn't put a pawn on d5
we'll have
or
to see again. It's lines.
Yeah, we'll see those lines.
So if he does this, yeah, I mean, if he tries to hop in, I think he's doing it a little early. We take. Just go back a move. We can't take with a knight. We show that's important because if knight takes knight, if we could just do it, we could show it.
Sure.
Knight takes knight, pawn takes, and that's a fork. Leads to some problems. So if we go back, we take with the bishop. He takes, and then knight g5. And we should win a pawn. We're going to
right, and here we would just take the e6 pawn. We would go back, and we would have material.
And I want to address, and I want to address. If we go back a move after knight g5, we play knight g5 now. If a student should note that the pawns are on dark, but the energy, even though we lost the light square bishop, the energy of the pieces is on light. Is focusing on e4 is light. And e6 light, and even queen h5. The queen could sometimes, when we show the queen coming out to h5 in some cases, could be nice. Again, on light. So there's that energy seeping in the pawns. Again, I think with this idea mentality, a student could be a chance to be creative, try things. Follow sometimes the lines here. Also try things of your own and get groovy with the colors and in this Stonewall and in whatever other openings you feel like playing, and in positions, middle games and end games. So it's just a good exploration. We wanted us to be to help the student to think of these color ideas whenever we play.
Sure. So black is not actually in time to go knight e4, and if he plays d5, we're back in usual Stonewall lines. But this bishop is out of place, and ideas like bishop b5 and knight e5 might exist. Or just like, this is really slow. So if they can't punish us, then we got our space as we wanted. So let's say they try to play against our setup. They play like d6, for instance, And they're like, well, you're not getting knight e5.
Hmm.
Well, then we have a space advantage, and we are at some point able to push e4. So this is just working for us. We might push e5 at some point. We get easy development with castles kingside, something like, for
Yeah, we could see
example.
the line. I mean,
Mhm.
we could see it, or we could see it later maybe. Oh, castles. Could he castles?
Sure, and the general idea is we can push e5 at some point. We can also
Yeah,
develop first. Maybe knight e4 is coming.
yeah. We
Maybe
could see
bishop
it through a
e2,
castle. Yeah, let's play it
e1.
out.
Yeah, sure. Let's say they castle
Castle okay.
e5.
E5. So basically, with E5, what E5 is really doing, if we go back a sec, E5 is really doing. It's saying you're not going to give me the knight outpost. I'm going to demand it with a pawn. And I remember when I had this, my first game, I had this. Developed it was back in the Manhattan Chess Club in the late '90s, '99, I think, and it was a game 30, I believe, against Gregory Brailovsky. He was a very strong player, 2400. I think I was around 2200 at the time, and I thought about it a while, and I was like, D6. There's no E5. There's no knight E5, and I came up with this idea, and it was I had a nice win there. It was kind of inspired me to look deeper into these to this line. So yeah, e5, and then he could take, or if he takes, we always take with the f1. I think that's something important to actually talk about. You want to open up the f file if you can. It also opens up the dark bishop, right? It opens up. We talk about the dark bishop being passive, but it could often activate with the right motivation. So that's good. And then the knight comes out to d5. Knight e4 is important.
Yeah, there's big attacking chances here.
Yeah.
All of our pieces are coming to the king side. Our
Okay.
bishops are flowing. We have a space advantage. I wouldn't be surprised if black was close to losing objectively.
Yeah, like rook c8. Show a few more moves. Rook c8, and then again, there's a move I like, a3 here. There's a move I like is a3.
Oh, that's so typical, isn't it? Because black's only chance for counterplay is to try to open the file and
Take.
harass our bishop, but now he can't. And then he's like, well, you can't even go here.
Exactly.
So it's like, well, we could do all those attacking ideas, or we can sort of chill and do that soon. Then all our pieces will flow in, and they're going to get checkmated in a few moves.
Absolutely, the knight cannot get to b4 anymore, and then again the pawn's on dark. Even a3, a little brick, a dark brick, and allowing the pieces to kind of flow properly.
Here, all of our moves make sense, but when I was thinking back to a lesson me and Yakov had, and he was like, Elijah, you don't always need to know what you're doing. You just need to know that your opponent is doing less than you.
Mm.
And here, we're doing a lot, but if we prevent their only idea, then we get to do a lot without calculating it, because all our pieces just come there. Oh yeah, that's another thing. It's like, the problem here, Elijah, is that you're calculating.
Yeah, think less and just build.
Well, it's more in a lot of positions you would prefer to have a simple win where you don't have to calculate the opponent's counterplay. If calculation implies here's my idea, here's my opponent's idea, well, what's best is if you have all the ideas and the opponent has none of the ideas.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we'll say maybe a few more moves. I'll show you. Queen c7. We could look at it. Queen c7. Queen e1. Queen e1. This is a nice little line here. Let's assume he does nothing. I don't know. Whatever. A6. I don't know. Listen. Queen g3. It's nice. Queen here. Usually the queen comes out on light. Here it's a little dark. There's already a threat of bishop h6 using the pin, which is very, very strong. He has to go king h8. And then we go queen h3. Queen h3 is really strong as well, threatening all sorts of mates. Yes, the bishop opens up against h7. There's a lot of things happening there. So we'll just show one line. If he was pawn h6, we could simply sack, and then we made him. It's going to be made soon.
There's got to be a lot of ways to
Knight
make
g5
here.
is probably straightforward, yeah. And there's mate. Okay, so yeah, this is very typical. Yeah, this again. So when they play d6, you aim to play e4, e5. We're gonna have some games, illustrative games in this, but again, this is a general idea of it.
Right, and at this point, like as always with this course, we're not aiming to show you need to memorize this or that line. The more important thing is, in this pawn structure, here are the ideal squares. This is what we're aiming for. Here's the color harmony. Here's what the opponent's idea is. If you get this typical setup, here is showing various middle game ideas. Like, do you have to play this exact line at this point? Well, no, you just have a big center for free and a nice attack. But it's nice to show what the ideas are, because in the same the pawn structures are where the ideas in chess are organized. The pieces are the main, the pawns support the pieces, and that makes the ideal squares and weaknesses clear. So it makes sense to show things this way. I really like a3 as well. So going back, maybe they won't let you play e5, or maybe you won't get this position, but it's like just to show the ideas. Let's say they play e5 and prevent you.
Yeah.
Then it's like
and if he'll take back. And now at this point, it's actually important to look this is a tricky position. because we could win a pawn if we pawn takes pawn. Let's say pawn takes pawn.
I'm not a big.
No. The problem is that, and that looks good, but the problem is that knight hops in and also hops in to get the pawn back, and then black is doing very. We could actually play queen e2.
I
Queen
mean,
e2. I just wanted to show knight takes pawn.
Knight takes pawn like this knight.
Yeah, that knight takes, and then this is good for black because black has a very comfortable center and his knight is well posted.
Right, white's ahead in development, but white could have done a lot better than this.
Yeah,
and
so this is
it's like this is an isolated pawn with an outpost square on e5, and I'm not paying attention too much to everything else. It's just more like the idea of this is not something we would prefer to allow. Maybe there's some tactical justification, but position we're not.
We take once, then we push. Yeah,
much simpler. Free pass pawn.
Yeah, so that's a protected pass pawn. It's a general theme. Take once, then push. Take once, push. That's a good bypass. Take once, bypass. And then d5 is a great structure where we have a protected pass pawn.
We just have better pieces, a protected passer, and the opponent has weaknesses. So the other one line was complicated. This is not. So if they play the bishop b7, the fianchetto lines like it's Queen's Indian, we play knight b2. We play for e4. If they play an early knight e4, then we take with the bishop and recapture the f pawn with knight g5. We win the e4 pawn or the e6 pawn if they protect with d5. And if they don't, we get our center, which will dangerously advance. Or if they advance with e5, then taking back the f pawn and pushing d5 offers us a positional advantage. So the Queen's Indian setup gives white plenty of ideas to work with.
Yeah, and in this case, we might play we could maybe play pawn to c4. Probably what we're going to look to is get our knight to c4. If we maybe show that for a moment, like we could play, let's say, castles. At some point, went knight to c4. Not yet, because we're attacking the pawn, right? We're attacking the e5, and then a4. A4 is a good way to play to make that outpost. The knight to c4 is better than pawn to c4. The outpost, in some cases, you flip back into e3. If we just show that arrows, please, you flip back, and then f5, and that could be really nice. And then again, that queen e1, queen g3. We could actually just queen
typical
e1,
maneuver.
g3. And we're seeing some dark energy. The dark bishop becomes a hero. We're seeing the pawns being on light here and helping some dark energy from the pieces. So again, it's you guys get used to this frax a little bit and have fun with it.
Start feeling the colors.
Exactly. Start feeling some color.
Chess is a colorful game. Add some color to your play, you could say.
Exactly. Some inspiration and again, I think the students that have lines, they can feel free to post the questions. I think that's
of course.
Okay.
So going back, let's say they play after c5, c3. Let's say they play d5 instead. Well, now we get the e5 outpost, and so knight e5. This is very similar to what we were looking at before. We have ideas like knight b2, queen f3, castles kingside, g4, g5, kingside attack stuff, but. Also,
95 is a little early. 95 is a little early, but it's good here. It's good
because we're doing it early now because they've already weakened this diagonal and we're preparing possible attacks. Maybe.
Yeah, it's good here, but I will say we're gonna have to catch up and make no mistake. This is not. We're not trying to bop him on the head and then knock him off of the board. We need to be humble. Pawns on dark attack. We're not trying to make them like that. We have to. No, it's an e4 square. We have to be humble and know our place. The e4 is weak. There's no question about it. E4 is weak if not tended to correctly. We're not getting a proper dacha. We have to play knight d2 very, very soon. A castle. Queen f3, and queen f3 again. Maybe we should play a few moves out.
Sure, and I just want to be clear, knight e4 is the typical response. It's like f5 is kind of annoying, but here they've already committed to not only wasting time, it's like they've possibly weakened their position. Bishop b5 check, and they can't even block anymore. King e7 is far from ideal. Okay, but so if they can't go to e4 yet, we have time for knight b2, so something like bishop d6, knight d2, and if they play knight e4, we can always take and play bishop b5 check, and this pawn is possibly weak. So we're in time, and if they keep waiting, well,
queen f3 seems alright.
They can't play knight e4 anymore.
Again, queen f3 insect repellent.
Yeah.
On light, we have a light
extra pawn.
Yeah, he can never jump in because we'll win a pawn, and that queen f3 is helping to get extra insect repellent. We're going to need that when they fianchetto the bishop, to help
They're
make sure no 94. I will say a lot of times allowing 94,
yes,
you
yes.
don't have the structure anymore. It's so easy to.
They're yeah, they're fighting for light, aren't they? They're fighting for light, but at no point are they actually able to use it because then they have to watch out for the light weaknesses they've
Exactly.
made.
Very nice. Very nice. Bishop e5 is also light. So there's a lot of light flexibility. Yeah. Yeah. So we're gonna get a little jiggity with it and use light all over. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so the fianchetto setups are not so challenging. Let's go back for a moment. E6, we're happy to see this, of course. Bishop D3, and okay, let's go back to what's more normal with D5. Of course, we don't want to play F4 yet because they play knight E4 and they cement with F5 themselves. So we play knight D2.
Yeah, knight d2, very humble, very quiet, and helping make sure there's no e4. We do have the ability to do that. We don't have to play f4 yet. F4 is used to stop e5 to clamp down. If we maybe just show f4 clamping down. No, no, yeah, f4 and then clamping down, clamping down. The f pawn and the d pawn clamp down.
Yes, like if Black already had knight C6 in, he'd be threatening E5, so we'd want to be go, go, go.
And now we have two, the f and the d pawn clamping down, and he'll never get it. But if as long as we don't have to do it yet, it helps to play knight d2 to again first replenish to cure the issue before the problem. Knight d2 light, bishop on d3 light, then f4. Okay, in a perfect setting, this is the perfect setting.
Yeah, I've heard a pinch of a prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Exactly. C5, and that's tickling the dark. We're going to try to play C3 to replenish.
C3, we talked about this in the intro, keeping it solid, also keeping the C2 square for our bishop if they play C4, knight C6. And they're trying to scare us with E5. We're not going to play some slow move now. So
you have to clamp down.
We got to go with F4. And now they don't have E5 in, and they don't have knight E4 in, so we get our good setup. So if they just play some slow developing setup, we get what we want. We're in time with knight F3, knight E5. We castle kingside, queen F3, G4, G5, and these middle games are very good for us. And I mean, a mating attack is pretty likely. So if Black wants to fight back, he needs an early concrete option to interfere with our setup. So bishop D6, knight F3, and Black actually can interfere with our setup now. At club level, he usually doesn't. We check the Lead Chess database, but let's say castles kingside. Actually, let's discuss the good option first. C takes D4 is it's really annoying because we almost always want to recapture.
That's actually really important. But we usually want to take with a pawn. I know that a lot of times the students say, "Oh, take with a C pawn." It's not true. You want to take with the E pawn if you can, because you get the bishop open. You get the dark bishop open little by little.
And also, we've sort of restricted the knight with C3.
Knight, yeah.
So here it's like, well, if we take this way, we lose our pawn.
The problem is here you have no choice. Yeah, you have no choice.
Yeah, if they play queen C7 instead, sometimes when they take the pawn, we can sacrifice it and get a lot of compensation with castles, but here we just don't have the compensation.
You can't give the pawn.
But here it's like, well, we're okay, but it's not ideal. First of all, they have knight b4 sometimes. If we retreat, they would have like bishop d7, bishop b5. It's a little uncomfortable, so we're maybe going to play a3, but Black is not worse. He's fine. But our ideas also are still interesting. But this is what happens if Black is very accurate. He'll take on d4 early with an attack on the f4 pawn, or he'll put bishop f5. But if he doesn't, then our setup makes more than enough sense, and we have good play in the middle game.
Yeah, and you know what? C takes the a3, and you're mostly fine. It's mostly normal. Back to normal. Again, a3, we saw another variation. You play a3, and you go back to the main line. So it's going to be mostly normal. Right.
So also, I mean, we would have put an earlier knight e5 in to prevent this idea, but then they would have got knight e4. So we're fighting to consolidate our setup. Our Stonewall setup has powerful middle game chances if we can keep it. If Black has various ways of fighting it very early, but if he doesn't, then our ideas are very powerful. So let's look at what happens if they don't play this concrete option. Knight e5, and now it's too late. I'm not saying Black is losing. I'm saying Black has allowed our attacking setup, and now we have the initiative. There's no weakness on f4. There's no way to get a knight on e4. And we're just going to play castles, queen f3, g4, g5, and Black is going to have to figure out how not to get checkmated.
We're back in our normal flow. We're back in our normal flow. It's nice to have a normal flow. And 95 is that. Again, all things being equal, I will say one thing, which is, I think, on a very practical level. Normally, you do not play 95 too early. When in doubt, castle first and then play 95. The reason is, especially before they castle, if you play 95 early, they get afraid. They get afraid. they won't castle. They'll play differently. It's very, very important. This is especially in slower chess where they're time to like, oh, 95. You don't need to signal. You don't need to signal. From very practical, for years and years I've seen, you try to castle first, let them castle, then you attack him. Here he's castled already, first of all.
And
Plus 95 is has a reason, right? It's a concrete reason. If there's a reason, you might. But again, it's just important, and this is not even move based, but it's very, very real. Like people are not used to these lines, and if you scare them, they get scared. If you don't scare them, they're like a turtle in like a hot water.
You gotta boil the frog.
Frog.
Was it
And
Grandmaster?
then by the time they realize it's too late, really, it's so interesting how you will win. And like they'll play normal lines, they'll be strong, and then suddenly you'll have 1900, sometimes even stronger players losing like effortlessly, like a baby. And it's incredible to see. It's because they don't realize the danger till it's way too late.
Was it Grandmaster Gregory Serper or was it a different Grandmaster? I'm not sure. But there was an article on chess.com called The Boiling Frog Attack. It was about the Stonewall because they get eased into checkmate.
Yeah.
Just relax. Oh, wait, I lost the game? Oh, well, luckily I can relax into the next
Absolutely. All right, so again, when all is equal, this is something I don't think we cover in the written course, and it's just something that it's good at a very practical level. It's a good little tidbit of advice. All right.
It's still possibly questionable 2200 plus in slow chess for the Stonewall attack if you play it as a system against all move orders. There are some ways Black can actively fight our system with very accurate play early on, but that's one of the reasons why we don't recommend the Stonewall as a system, and against those accurate tries, we are recommending alternatives. Okay, so let's go back. Like the cheesecake, for example.
Exactly.
Okay, so c5, c3, c4, a typical mistake. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. This is so bad. The early computers used to do this too.
The early computers used to play c4, and it helps because now the bishop has the same diagonal hitting the light on h7,
but then,
and yet it's even safer. Okay.
Because e4 is possible now, and you don't have to worry about the weakness of the d4 pawn. Like, let's imagine for a moment that we're trying to play like e4 in some position. Well, takes.
You gotta show.
All right, I'll just show it here. Like, this is even hard to do. I mean,
ways to move or something. Yeah.
Obviously I'm playing f4, but like,
the problem is when they have pressure, you're never getting e4, right?
Because it's like we have
e4 is a weak pawn,
weak outpost square. It's playable, but it's maybe not playable with f4. I mean, the weaknesses are too serious.
c5 keeps us honest. That's the when they play c4, you're getting new possibilities. You're relieving the tension. You don't want to do that.
This tension was useful. It restricted White's e-pawn.
Okay.
So going here, it's like White not only has his typical Stonewall ideas with an attack, he can play e4, both as a standalone, but also in the Stonewall without worrying about this weakness anymore. So let's say White still plays it as a Stonewall. I mean, why not? Knight f3. Oh, do we really? No, we don't even have to worry about that idea anymore. Yeah. And this structure is not as good as we would like it to be. But that's not there anymore either. So
very happy here. Very happy. Castle now. We castle again. No 95. Here's a good example with 95. You don't. Then they start panicking, and then they have defenses. You take your time. No problem. Take your time. Castle first. Castle, rule of thumb, castle.
And then they'll make some slow move, and then when you play 95, you already have your rook ready. Like, let's say g4, g5, queen h5. We also have rook f3, rook h3 as an idea.
And your castle.
And it's like, why go for the ridiculously aggressive stuff right now when you could develop your pieces first, and then you have those ideas in reserve? Then they're like, wait, how do I defend? But all your pieces are already in the attack? None of their pieces are in the defense? Because the closed center cuts the board in half.
Yeah, it's a very comfortable position for White. Okay, so
all right, so there's other move orders Black can try. E6 is an early e6 is probably just inaccurate. D5, bishop d3. I mean, we don't want to play this because we commit too early.
D4 is a bit early.
Bishop f5, bishop d3. I mean, this
Even
is okay.
It's still okay,
but
be recommended.
But I mean, we were aiming for the setups where Black is stuck and doesn't have much counterplay, and so if we want to make it tricky for him to develop his light squared bishop, and it won't always make as much sense. Like if we play bishop d3 first, he can't play.
He stops, fights for the diagonal.
Yeah, like here, for instance, if they try to get like frisky with bishop g4, we have f3. And then
knight
we
e2 first we could play, but I think we'll
knight
get to
e2,
that
knight
soon.
f4.
Oh yeah.
And when they go back, we can take and win the bishop pair, and we still have c4 as an idea. Maybe queen b3, we're slightly better. So it's just hard for them to develop that bishop. We want to commit to a Stonewall under better circumstances.
And if we go back, actually, bishop g4, f3 is fine, but if we go back, we're going knight e2 first is actually the way. Knight e2 first, I've always, again, it may probably will transpose.
It's probably a good habit to develop your pieces, all else being equal.
Also, it doesn't scare. You want to play the quiet moves, a castle. No need to scare people. Quiet. We've seen that in the cheesecake. Queen d2, quiet moves.
We'll scare them when it's too late.
When it's too late, exactly. Boiling frog.
Let's not let them calculate the tactics when the tactics are defensible. Let's let them calculate how they're going to lose after we're crushing them.
Yeah, knight e2 first, and I get f3 because f3 is very committal. Pawn moves only. Knight developing, very happy to develop, and then f3, knight f4, and we could actually see that variation. Are we going to look at that or not?
I mean, we're going to see that later in the model game section, and white's a little bit better. Yeah, but I mean, if black doesn't play bishop g4 and he doesn't play bishop f5, then he's not fighting for light, especially if that diagonal wasn't working. Well, not as effectively as us. So, and let's say here d5, bishop e3, and well, we're covering that in a different move order. Let's go to this. So we were looking at this through the knight f6 move order and looking for independent tries that are like, if you play the g6, you're going to go into the cheesecake lines. If you play e6, it's not so challenging. The b6 lines were covered, but otherwise it's probably just the same as d4, d5, and this is the main move order where we'll cover it. So d4, g5, e3. We're playing e3 because we don't want to commit to knight f3 or f4 yet. We decide based on whether they fianchetto. So let's say knight f6. Well, no, let's cover that soon. c5, c3, and all of the usual ideas still apply.
I think in general, whenever they play c5, you want to play c3.
Yeah, the Stonewall is more of a structure than a theory opening to memorize. You're more aiming to get a typical position. Okay, so...
Well, I mean, c3, you just need to rebuild the pawns.
Right.
It's actually interesting to know, if you play bishop d3, instead of c3, it's very easy to slip. It's so easy to make this move, and actually it's a near blunder because they play knight c6. They play knight c6. Notice how the pawn on d4 is already in danger. Now you have to play c3.
I mean, I'd be tempted by knight f3 because I don't even like c3 because of e5.
Well, e5... And again, he hits us too hard on dark, and we never did get the grip. We
never got f4.
We never got the pawn grip. So again, the pawns on dark allow for further opportunities on light.
f4 or d4. I like Stonewall, but it's also the Pillsbury grip.
Yeah, absolutely. So c5, I think, is invariably. I don't believe there's really any exceptions.
c5, c3.
c5, c3, and actually we could throw this in c4. People have asked me c4. What do you play? Like c4 is a little annoying. It's actually kind of because it blocks the bishop on d3.
Well, if you do nothing, it's annoying. But we got to challenge the pawn chain.
Challenge the pawns, and the best way is b3.
Yeah, b3 is typical. So it's like if they've already developed these pieces, they would have the rook be defended. But in general, for both colors, when they start advancing the c-pawn like this, it just doesn't work.
b5, and you hit him a4. You play. They try to protect it. If they take, you're happy to take.
Yeah, because you have the rook and the easy development, and they just beat the feet of the point. But here it's like a4 attack.
If they play b5, you attack it by the base again. Right, and then and then they can't protect. They actually can't protect. We just
we just start taking
a4, and they try to protect with a6. It's too late because there's pin. And if they take a4, right? If the pawn takes a4, we actually don't take a4. We take c4 because then he's going to lose all his pawns.
We have a free center now. We can take here. We can just take here and ignore the pawn. It's just too easy to develop. The center is crushing. So black can't do this. These early sidelines don't really.
And we could even add that the pawns on dark, the pieces again flowing on light.
Oh wait, that's true. Let's look at that.
Pieces flowing on light again. We're seeing that. By the way, Queen f3. We missed Queen f3.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Queen f3. Queen f3 is again on light. It's a little book trap, but again. Bishop, all these ideas, pawn solid on dark, when you're able to express, when you have that solid inner the dacha, you're able to express on light, and that's humble start, but with ideas,
with aspiration.
Paving the way for aspirations on light, and that's again, it creeps up, and it hits quick. It hits a lot harder than one would expect. Yeah.
So e3. Let's look at a couple other sidelines real quick.
Knight c6. So that's the idea of knight c6. is to
Play
play
e5.
e5. And again, if he gets e5,
Then he's
there
fine.
is no Stonewall. He's
We
fine or better, or better.
yeah, we
Let's be honest. Fine or better. It's not
we
a
don't get
good thing.
we don't get compensation for our restricted bishop. We don't get our structures. This is bad. We get like, so we're like, are we playing knight
It is
f3? Or are we playing
nightmare.
f4? Well, I don't like f4 here because we've already committed to weakening these squares. Well,
Yeah.
first of all, they even have the symmetrical Stonewall, but let's not even talk about that right now. They have bishop f5. They have knight f6. They just clamp on light. It's like, so we're on these dark squares to eventually fight for light, but they beat us to the bang. I mean, well, what are we doing here? This doesn't make much sense anymore. So we're going with knight f3. And in queen pawn openings, knight c6 is usually misplaced if it blocks the c pawn, and so white will be a bit better here. He's going to play c4, knight c3, queen b3, target the d5 pawn.
Yeah,
Black
we show
isn't
that.
able
We
to
show
meet
that.
c4 with
Yeah, we're
c6.
just showing arrows. Yeah. So
Yeah,
c4 will be
something like this. Bishop g4. We can even play like
we're veering a little from the Stonewall.
it can be any. I mean, you could play this first. You can play c4. You can win the bishop pair first. You can play bishop b5. But the general idea is this knight is somewhat misplaced, and our natural moves should be good enough for some advantage.
Okay, yeah. So when they play this, we might switch a little bit and play a normal queen pawn game.
But
His knight in c6 is misplaced.
right.
We could play f4. There are some issues, some good, some bad, and I would say the student could try both. I actually really think try both. Like there's no problem. Again, if we're gonna really ask what to do, maybe we lean towards knight f3.
So the idea with these other systems is the Stonewall is good as a pawn structure. It's as a system. While you have your typical ideas, you can be pretty comfortable there. But in some situations, especially where they're getting really early control of the white squares, objectively will be slightly worse. And I mean, if you're comfortable with that because you know the ideas well, or you're like a club player or playing fast chess, by all means. But we want to be honest about this and say, in these few move orders, don't play the Stonewall unless you're okay with that. Here's what you do instead. And avoiding, other than that, this is a good setup.
Yeah, I mean the reality is knight c6 is the oldest thing in the book. They say don't in the queen pawn you don't play knight c6 if you're black. You don't block the c pawn.
Uh-huh.
If black is willing to do that, I'm okay with switching a little bit and playing this. And I prefer. I think white has a pull.
Yeah,
we could maybe show a few
yeah,
c4.
it's kind of interesting. I was remembering this. There was this in Nimzovich's, I think it was My System or Chess Praxis. He was like experimenting with this, and after knight c6, he annotated d4 as exclaim. It's like
even as a course of a tempo. Yeah,
it's like
cool,
knight c6 is misplaced in queen pawn openings. Now this is
Yeah.
interesting because they're trying the job of a London now with d4, d5, like knight c3, knight f6, bishop f4. But this is positionally substandard. It's only like white has an extra tempo and he's trying to use it dynamically. I've looked at these lines. Not only does black equalize earlier than normal if he plays it well, positionally speaking,
Again,
like it's dynamic compensation for positional
we can
issues.
say the knight has some downsides.
It's restricted here, and in the meantime, you can't do the usual plans of c4, queen b3 to target the d5 pawn. You better hope for some other compensation that isn't positional, because positionally, it's just not doing well here.
Okay, so yeah, and that's a line where white could play solid and eventually play c4 with a good game.
That's right. So let's look at e3, bishop f5. This is potentially interfering. So we sort of have two options here. One of them is when they play the London style, we can sort of say you weaken the b7 pawn, and I kind of like c4 with queen b3.
The bishop f5 is building on light squares. So it's both building on light squares and weakening light squares. So it's building on this diagonal. It's neglecting light on the queen side. So when that happens, we're going to b7 particularly. If we want to maybe circle the b7 square.
Right, just
b7 is going to be weakness. And that's something we can try to take advantage of with c4 and queen b3 and immediately pounce.
Yeah, and this is a really typical setup, and we're going to be a little bit better as white here.
It's hard for black because if he let's say you have queen c8, if he plays queen c8,
the d5 pawn would drop.
Well, queen c8, we take, and then queen takes pawn, and that's nice. You know, it's extra pawn. Again, on light, the energy of the pieces on light. Pawns on dark, pieces expressing themselves. On light, so that's pretty,
and this idea of targeting queenside pawns with early bishop moves is typical. Just to show this for black, it's like, let's say d4, d5, knight f3, knight f6, bishop f4. Well, now white suddenly needs to be accurate. Like here, he's not even supposed to play c3. He has to play knight b2 and go for, well, I'm not going to get into how white can equalize in the London system if he knows unlimited theory right now. But after c3, queen b6, black is already objectively better and is fighting for the initiative and has pace advantage. I did hear it said on the Quality Chess blog, someone asked, I think it was Andrew Martin, I think his name was, like, why don't you recommend, why don't you make an opening book on the Quality Chess, on the London system? And they're like, well, we only want to recommend good openings. But if you want to learn how to equalize as white, I think there's 2 books by New in Chess on how to equalize in the London. Okay, Yakov's probably like, I play the London sometimes. Okay,
that's okay.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, so again, so let's see. Bishop f5. There's 2 ways to play.
C4 is the
there's 2 ways.
anti-London way.
And again, let's see maybe 1 or 2 lines here. C4, what they play like.
Yeah, we've looked at this a little bit. So like,
and if they play B6, I mean, if they play B6, that weakens. Well, hold on. Well, B6 weakens some squares.
Like this bishop should be.
And it weakens the light squares a little bit. And again, is it a huge advantage? No, but it's white's having a good time
it's
here.
Just a little more comfortable for white.
And yeah, it's not a move that black wants to play. B6, and the C7 pawn could become a backwards pawn in an open file, which is somewhat of an issue. Okay, so white's happy enough.
Just a little bit better in easy play. So, and I mean, they could get concrete with this, but if like
knight C6 is a tricky line, the Baltic, I think. And I've had this a lot. And then if you take B7, it's you can't do that because it's a blunder if we show that queen takes is knight B4. It doesn't work. It doesn't, and we could get trapped. The queen's almost trapped.
So and there's like ideas like A6 and Rook B8 or something.
Yeah, it's trapped. It's too risky.
Let's not do that. Let's either play Bishop D2 to control the B4 square.
Bishop D2 is a good move.
Or A3, and white's still a bit better. But
yeah, I recommend Bishop D2. Bishop D2 to stop knight B4 and stop knight A5.
Yeah, that's so similar to some lines we're recommending in the Carol concourse. Yeah, you are really thematic with this, but let's not get too distracted with that.
Yeah, so knight is Bishop D2, yeah, Bishop.
And we don't need to go further. We still have a little more comfortable play, especially because there's a simple alternative. Like C4 is like, I'm trying to make this complicated. I like my London system ideas. But didn't you tell me that you preferred the simple Bishop D3?
Sometimes. I mean, well, I don't know. I would say it's instructive. It's really, really instructive to play this style, to get used to it, to get the colors. I would say the student that wants to, quote unquote, play the best move is C4, but to learn the most, you'll learn the most from this. So play both. Because bishop takes, pawn takes, and it's, again, the pawn's acting as a tiny mini bishop. And you'll never play e4. I think it's real. No, you don't play f4 even. I wouldn't even recommend f4. I mean, f4 can be played. It's really. I actually think in this case you're not attacking him. You're not mating him. You just play knight f3, castle, queen, bishop d2, maybe rook c1. Queen will probably stay on light, and to act as kind of a light square bishop. You have a dark bishop. The queen will probably tinkle around. And act as a light energy. You don't play e4. I think that's worthwhile mentioning. You will not play e4.
It weakens
take
your
the arrows away.
Weakens your d4 pawn.
Yeah, let's take the other arrows away, and then we show e4.
Let's not.
Yeah, not play e4 because it weakens the d pawn. You don't need e4. He's not going to. Yeah, leave it as is. d3 is humble, but sufficient and pure. And there's a certain light, and you don't even play f4. You don't need more pawns on dark.
If you did that, the whole point of that would be to eventually get a light attack, but you've already traded your lights for bishop. It's like a positional game now.
It's very easy to get like, oh, f4, boom, boom, boom. It's not it. That's not it. You don't have a bishop. Be flexible with it. Enjoy. See what happens. Try to treat it as like a canvas for ideas.
Yeah, Yakov would be always telling me like a couple years ago, it's like, Elijah, you don't need to be doing things all the time. You don't need to be trying to crush your opponents. Sometimes you can just do nothing. And,
do nothing. Knight f3, and let's see what they have to do.
And if you draw, that's okay. Yeah, you can draw. Sure, why not? And then, and I mean, I was like, what? How do I do that? But then I started getting better results, and I had my first international master win over the board after I started doing nothing. Actually, that game I was accidentally half an hour late, so I was forced to do nothing because if I went for my usual complicated stuff, I would have blundered something. So apparently,
interesting. I mean, we'll see a few moves here. Knight f3. I think it's worthwhile seeing a few. Knight f6, knight f3, e6, castle.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a try to c5, and then we can actually play there's a cool line to play is b3, b3, knight c6, bishop boy 2, and then he takes, pawn takes, knight takes, Knight takes knight. Bishop takes. Bishop maybe d6 or something. Knight d2 and then knight f3. And then it's kind of cool lines. And maybe the queen comes to c1 and then b2. I kind of like c1 to b2. And notice how we have a good squeeze on the long diagonal. And our d3 pawn will stay on d3, act as a little light. And b3, so a2, b3 are also little light energies.
Yeah.
It's a nice pure structure.
Yeah.
Again, slow and a nice comfortable. We don't know. We don't play e4. No need. It's good as is. d3 is good enough.
Light brick.
Light brick. Yeah.
I just have a question though. So this setup though, controlling for dark squares makes a lot of sense, especially because we have this light brick and we're going to get an outpost. I'm just sort of wondering, do we want to maybe play f4 first, or what are your thoughts?
It's a great question. I would lean towards being overkill. My instinct is overkill, and I think both are fine. But you don't need the hassle. You don't need it because then if he gets e5, it's too annoying.
Yeah, like there's a backward pawn now.
Sometimes do nothing. Let him play e5, and it hurts his center, blocks his bishop. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I think especially for the student to kind of realize, let them do the little thing, let them do the work.
Yeah, that's not natural for me. But now that I think about it, maybe let's say something like correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe e4
maybe
here.
Now e4, let him push,
and then we have like maybe knight c4 coming.
Yeah, knight c4. Yeah.
And maybe our bishop's going to be a little more pleasant. We can play bishop a3.
There might be c1 and f4.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah, we have that counter attack, and maybe f5's coming at some point.
And the pawns suddenly become a mini bishop.
It's true. We have better color harmony, and the pawns in the center are restricting their bishop.
Yeah. So some ideas, some thoughts. Yeah.
Well, it's a slow positional game. You sort of have to enjoy the little things and be okay with just playing the position instead of just trying to win right now. If you want to crush your opponents, well, maybe c4 and move 3 is a little bit more forcing. Very interesting. Okay, so instead of bishop f5, let's say at c6. Maybe black remains flexible.
Yeah, back to a normal line. This is a c6, bishop d3, all standards.
He's just staying flexible with his knight. He's like, you want to play your Stonewall? All right, I'm playing the Stonewall.
Right.
And then we're all blocked up and nothing happens.
It's good to know that whenever they delay knight f6, again, this is a psychology also as well. Like, it often means they might, if you play f4, they're like, oh, I play f5 too. Like, it's a very standard reaction, and you don't need to give people easy time to play annoying moves. Don't give them, if they play f5, we'll deal with it, but don't encourage them to play challenging moves. So the way to not encourage, I think this is not intuitive. It's from endless games. You see what helps people find moves and what doesn't. You don't play f4 too early. Let them play knight f6 and then play f4. Here, I've seen people play f5. The Dutch players may play f5. But you're not kind of scaring them yet, so there's no reason for them to be scared. They'll play knight f6 most of the time.
Right. If we play knight d2, we're flexible. If they commit to a Stonewall, then we've already overprotected the e4 square, and we're doing good. Like, let's say they play knight f6, f4. Well, we're doing great now. We have our better than usual setup even, because c6 is probably just a waste of time.
It's a bit passive. c6 is a bit passive, yeah.
But the other idea is that if they just play more waiting moves, we have better development than they do, and we get to play e4, and we're first and second.
Yeah, this is actually really interesting, right? This is very, very, it's very nuanced. This is not standard. It's actually, I think, worth mentioning. E4 is very, very non-standard to play it this early. It's due to this exact move order. Nothing more, nothing less.
If black is extremely flexible, he does so at the cost of development. We have the first tempo. We can use it to be flexible with development. And so, I mean, we're going to be first if it's just a flexibility battle, but we don't want the symmetrical Stonewall.
Black hasn't done anything. So it's almost like, at this point, if you play f4, play f5, and he's kind of waiting cagey, and you say, you know what, you've lost so many tempi, I'll just play normally. Even if it means we waste a tempo, look at his tempi. He has like 5 random moves. Same with bishop d6.
But it's the same idea. They've just lost time. Their setup only makes sense if we commit to an early Stonewall, whereas our moves make sense even if we don't.
Yeah, so occasionally, again, I think it's worth mentioning that e4 is rare. It's a very specifically only when they do bad moves. But other than that, you're going to probably not want to lean towards this early e4.
Yeah, that's right. Especially because our Stonewall attacking middle game setup is what we're aiming for. Yeah. It's very strong. So
e4 push is a huge highlight of the Stonewall playing correctly. But not usually this early.
Maybe a move 10 or something. So 15. So c6 is not challenging. But if they play f5, actually, there's something interesting about this because, well, we don't play f4, So what are we doing? Well, maybe we develop, and then their whole point was they get to control the e4 square, but we always have f3, and we have a lead in development. We're developing super easily. There's a lot of pawn breaks in the air. Like c4 could happen at any moment. F3, e4. Who knows? Maybe even g4. Like I'm talking
So
about.
f3, maybe e4 at some point, maybe g4, maybe c4.
We just have better development, and just positionally speaking, this is their better bishop. It controls this weak square, or restricted. So if you can exchange it,
maybe trade the dark square bishops at some point.
We're usually concerned about, like, let's imagine that, like, they play this, and we've already played, like, let's say b3, bishop b2, queen c1, and bishop a3, and they've played bishop d6. Well, this is very similar to the bishop f5 lines, where they put their bishop here and they takes, right? Well, we recapture with the pawn to control the light squares. Well, if they try to control the dark squares, they've already played c6.
Yeah, basically, we're going to trade the bishops. There's no way for them to make a mini bishop. They can't. They have no pawns on bishop on dark, and they have no pawns on dark. So it's a good, it's a nice. It's going to be a nice transition, a nice even lead to an endgame, to good endgame.
Sure, I mean it's just good. The Stonewall is, so they play the Stonewall, but they do it under the worst of circumstances, and they're also behind in development. So they didn't get what they wanted, and we did. So that c6 as a flexible setup is not too challenging. So e3, knight f6, bishop d3. c5. Well, we'll get to that. Knight c6.
Yeah, knight c6 is again looking to play e5, and we have to, as alarm bells. One thing, if you were going to do one thing, and only one thing right in the Stonewall is do not allow e5. It's very easy to get all fancy into developing, and they have e5. Nothing is relevant. If we allow e5, it's we're almost always worse. That's the reality.
Better to allow knight e4 than to allow e5.
That's a fair way to put it. That's a fair way to put it. Knight e4 is often very dubious and unclear, but allowing e5 is just always
don't ever allow it.
Unless in the cheesecake.
Oh yes, please play e5 in the cheesecake.
Say, please play e5.
Yes, please play e5.
Again, we're kind of jumping, but a little bit in the cheesecake. E5 has its own thing, and they get it, and they get it on. We're happy when they get it. Versus the Stonewall, though, they're not supposed to get it. If they get it, we did something wrong.
I can almost taste the cheesecake now.
The cheese is cherry cheesecake.
We don't have the cherry cheesecake handy, but at least we got the blueberries handy, you know. Okay, so
f4 clamping down, and this is I think the known theoretical line of quote unquote refutation. It's been for. It's supposedly refutation. It's not. Of course, it's so overdone. But it's an idea for black. So black plays here to threaten knight c6.
You need something concrete. I mean, if he doesn't, then we'll just get our usual ideas: c3 to prevent knight b4, knight d2 to prevent knight e4, and then we develop our pieces as we usually do. Knight comes to e5, and so forth.
So what's the next move they play knight boy for?
Yeah, this is the critical try. But let's say they do this. Well.
Knight b4 trying to win the bishop. So again, we're not super happy to give up the bishop, but at the same time, we're not super sad.
We have a light rebuilder.
Because d3, take with the pawn, and the d3 pawn becomes a light rebuild.
Then all our pieces can develop. We can castle kingside, maybe b3, bishop a3, maybe bishop d2, knight c3, rook c1.
We can show. Yeah, so again, we're just arrows.
Sure. Like,
castle, we're going to play maybe b3 and bishop coming out.
Sure, and another idea.
Coming to c1.
This is possibly a weakness, and in the long run, maybe we could consider, like, against this structure, like, sometimes there's minority attack ideas to create a backward c-pawn. The c5 square could possibly be weak. Yeah. But in any case, it's a positional game. Black has a light squared bishop. It's kind of hard to find an active square for it. We are having a not a great bishop, but we could exchange it if we need to.
It's good on b2. A lot of times they play c5, and we're happy to take.
Yeah, it's like our bishop isn't great, but how are they going to activate their pieces? They don't have a lot of pawn breaks.
We're happy to take.
And then we have this long diagonal. Are we better? Well, I don't know. Are we worse? Probably not. I mean,
I think white's
slightly better, maybe.
White's a little more comfortable. And another thing is worth mentioning, though, you never play e4. Almost never. Like, that's actually really, really it's intuitive to play e4 often. Like, you show me the e4 push, and that's something we would try to avoid. We would not play because that would
open their bishops.
No, it will weaken the d4 pawn. Actually our d4 becomes sterile. Like it's not healthy.
Like maybe bishop g4 takes, and then
no, she won't take. He'll just play. If we play ever e4, they wait, they ignore it,
At
And
some point, takes might be strong.
maybe, but it doesn't. Our d4 is just too loose. Our d4 is
That's like the weakness of double pawns, right? So if our pawn was on c3, then it would protect the pawn, but now it's not. So the reason
yeah,
this is the weak pawn,
yeah.
and it's
Keep it as is. D3
artificially
humble, but
isolated.
good. Humble but secure.
Maybe this at some point, who knows? But yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so let's say knight e4 instead. Well, now,
He's trying to jump in.
I bet that
Let's
knight's
see
a bit
for
loose now. So
94 is jumping into our hole, and he kind of maneuvered it in such a way that he got there in time. He got there before we played Knight David 2, but he's a little bit behind development, so we're gonna try and punish him for that. Okay.
Yeah, we have like we have like knight c3, maybe queen b3 ideas, takes d5, the knight's getting undermined.
And again, C4 largely in one. It's very important to kind of conceptualize it. 94 is trying to pounce on light. C4 is trying to say, "Hey, come on, you can't. I have light too," and fighting back. The pieces are coming in quickly.
Right. So let's say they play like bishop g4 instead on move 4. Then after knight f3, it's kind of a normal Stonewall. I'm not, the knight's maybe not great here.
Knight's not great.
I'm not particularly happy that they have this, but we can recapture this way.
We always have to with the pawn, yeah, always. And I would say leave the c pawn back for a little bit here. Maybe leave it back, depending.
Maybe we'll play a3.
Maybe. Again, it's worth tinkering with these things, but sometimes if you feel they're going to try to trade bishops, leave the pawn there for a little bit. Worthwhile. All right, you can see.
I don't know. There's lots of ideas here.
And this is good. Okay.
Yeah, white's fine, and yeah, there's a lot of ideas.
I think white's very, very comfortable, more than fine. So
actually, I'd like you to explain that because I've seen some similar positions with the Stonewall Dutch with reverse colors, and that's considered to be acceptable. But I can't say I'm as familiar with the bishop g4 ideas as I am with the main lines. Can you explain white's middle game ideas and how it varies with bishop g4 compared to the main line?
Yeah, I mean we're gonna actually unpin. Like we could play a few moves out here. Let's say castle.
Yeah, let's do it. So let's say e6, castles,
bishop David 6. We could play.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and they don't even have this.
They don't have c5. Again, it's very important. They play knight c6. So kind of like it's coming. It's not that great. You don't block. Again, this is a rule of thumb. There are exceptions, but you don't block the c pawn in the queen pawn games. You just don't do it. It has no c5. I mean, you need c5 for space. We're going to show maybe that c5, but that's a good way to pressure white center to get space for the black queen. When you don't have it, you're coming with this advantage. And in this case, I would say at this point, I would say c3 to stop knight. But you could play c3 if they play bishop f5. I know it's a little, and you could play queen c2, force to trade, and he takes. I
guess we're threatening to control the e4 square.
We will. He castles. Yeah, he castles. Okay.
I'm wondering. Okay.
Maybe if he plays knight e4 right away. Well, we could. Anyway, in the knight d2.
Mm-hmm, knight d2.
And then eventually we play e4. I mean, he has no space.
Knight e5 and then e4.
What is he going to do though? Like that's another thing. Yeah.
Oh, he's kind of stuck.
He gets no stuck. There's no c5. And again, like Elijah was explaining earlier, e4 is a very big. We don't even play that. I think we just play e4. We don't need anything. We just need e4.
Mm-hmm.
E4. Elijah was explaining earlier about the c pawn, the pawn on c5, black's pawn.
That's true. Then they started
for pressuring the center.
Exchange, and the d4 pawn becomes isolated.
When black has the pawn on c5, he's keeping us honest. When you don't have the pawn on c5, invariably e4 will be a big move. That's very important. That e4 push was something that years into me playing, I started realizing importance, and more years went when I started more and more realizing, and I realized that that's the key to playing it well, to understanding of the Stonewall, is e4. The e4 put, e4 square, e4 push, and light as a whole. And I think this is a position which looks like, black is okay. I believe white's very, very happy here. Like a move, let's say queen e7. Let's try queen e7. And then, yeah, you'd like to play e4 right away. You can because he takes an f4. We could just show that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, even here, I'm kind of wondering, like...
No, it's too much. I think it's too much. So you don't want to give that 4 pawn. But, yeah, it's a bit... It's interesting. Yeah, Elijah explaining maybe it's okay to try to sack. But I think your position is good enough. Knight e5 followed by e4, and we're pretty happy.
And then there's some threats.
Yeah, exactly. So let's say he plays rook David 8, and then e4, and there's actually a threat. If he takes, we're happy, but if he doesn't take, we're going to get.
Yeah, we would have some space advantage
and
here.
And the queen acts as
a second light. Oh,
A
sorry, as
light
a
bishop.
light
There's a
bishop.
light bishop.
Yeah, we get to
And it's a
rebuild.
very, yeah, I've had this a lot of times, and it's very easy for white to get crushing position, like real crushing. If there's no counterplay on the center on d4, you could just extend that lead.
Like
Then
this would be
yeah,
necessary.
c5 you need as black. If you don't have it, you're in rough shape, and it's subtle. You start realizing what's going wrong. It's going wrong. You didn't play the pawn c5. You didn't do your share. Black has to do his share. That's black tries to get an unfair, a quick knight c6. It comes with a price, and then you can play very quiet and get a position which is an advantage. Queen g4. I mean, well, what does he even play here? Let's say he plays h6. I don't know, h6. Queen g4, threatening bishop takes h6. Queen king h7.
Can you?
And
Wow. Hold on. Can I was just wondering, like, this is dangerous, so dangerous that I'm already like trying to calculate ridiculous things like
yeah, I
this.
mean, pawn takes is okay.
And then
It's
I'm
not.
like, rook
Rook f6 might
f6,
be even. Yeah, even this
rook
is good.
f1,
Yeah, even this is probably good.
boom. I don't even,
Maybe you don't even
maybe.
need this, but you have a lot of again
It
doubling
just,
the rooks is
it
huge.
just shows how easy it is. I mean, white doesn't need to do that,
Yeah.
obviously. He can just move, like,
Rook
black has no
f3.
moves.
Yeah, it's very rough. Even the knight on c6
I
is
mean,
out of spiral.
would you even have time for, like, this, possibly?
Absolutely, absolutely. Notice, I think it's fair to say, and there are exceptions, but the queen will almost the whole game may go. The queen only steps on light, the whole game, and that's pretty standard. And again, we have a golden bishop. We talked about a golden bishop before, an unopposed bishop,
Targeting the dark squares
dark.
over there.
But the queen will be the second bishop, and again, that's a good Capablanca. That's his idea. If you have one bishop, the queen will probably want to be placed on the second color to act as a second bishop. Harmony. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. So going back, there's like e6 instead of bishop g4, but then we're here,
Knight
but
f3 is fine. I would say knight
knight
d2.
d2 felt
Yeah,
like
knight
more
d2
in line
is-
with what you were telling me,
Yeah,
right?
let's keep the knight d2 here.
Yeah, knight d2 makes sense because then we prevent knight d4. Our next move is probably actually c3 even, right?
Yeah, stop
To
knight
prevent
d4.
knight d4.
Yeah.
Now, we can allow these ideas, we're still fine, but we want to not let them get
There's no
any
need. There's
funky
no need.
business. Then we get to have our usual play. I mean, so there's lots of ways to play, of course, but why calculate the opponent's counterplay when you can just prevent their counterplay and then you're the only one who's playing? Okay, so let's look at e6 on move 3, bishop d3, e6, knight d2.
Knight d2 replenishing light. Yeah, before playing f4 in a perfect setting, and again, this is a perfect setting where we don't have to play f4 yet. We have a chance to secure e4 and only then play f4. That's going to be the way. It's very easy to get wrapped up in this again and miss f4 when you need to play f4, and that's not good. Again, you have to stop e5, but they can't play e5. If they play e5, you take, right? E5 take, no problem. Free pawn.
Yeah.
So and then you have a chance to go knight David too. All right.
C5, C3, C4. We've already looked at this sort of thing. It's just the same.
Okay.
There's lots of different move orders. It's all the same.
We could kind of go through this with a bishop here.
It's all
F4,
the
knight
same.
f3.
There's so many different move orders, but as long as you
Yeah,
understand the structures, you're doing well.
Yeah, it's same. And again, c4 usually we're pretty happy to see because it means he's losing the pressure. Whenever they play c4, that's a good sign that my d4 is very secure. I can probably play e4. Maybe we could see a couple more moves here. Knight e5. Let's say b5, knight e5. Bishop a7, and probably wait. Do we have e4? I don't know if we have.
We could, but why?
Why we don't
It's
need
like
e4.
the problem.
Yeah,
The problem
we don't need it.
is
We don't need it. Yeah,
that we're
yeah.
calculating.
Exactly. Queen f3 is like often e4 is good. Queen f3 though I think is even better.
I mean, I prefer checkmate when I don't have to calculate variations.
Yeah, it's good. I will say the problem with e4 is if we just show e4 in a diagonal
Do we
without
have
moving the
that?
piece, just as a arrow. His bishop opens up.
Why give him this counterplay?
He
Why
might have
calculate?
counterplay if we go back and move. He plays bishop David 7 instead of bishop b. Then actually e4 is very very high. Like I will because if we just first of all e4 if he takes. Let's see if he takes. Knight takes. Take.
This is looking pretty scary for
It's
black.
really really scary. And then again if he takes our knight, let's say he takes our knight last move.
Oh well, he can't even
And then,
take our knight.
with his bishop.
Oh well, then we take with the f pawn, of course.
And then the dark bishop is a hero.
Oh,
suddenly.
fantastic! And there's already ideas like queen h5, g6, bishop takes h6. Not to mention
the
these
pieces
rook
open
left.
up. The pieces open up. Again, that's kind of like we saw the last variation. But if we go back And then when we play e4, if he doesn't take, if we go back to where we play e4, and
Oh, well, then we just crush him. Like,
then let's say he plays queen c7 again. This is a really good trap to see.
Boom.
Again, the knight takes, and then e5. It comes up in a lot of ways, and you'll have it particularly in blitz. I mean, 100%. Every student, you promise in the first month of playing, I promise you'll have this at least once. My word.
Just play more blitz.
You gotta play maybe a lot of blitz. But I really know they'll get it soon enough. Like really, it won't take long. It's easy to fall into.
Yakov was talking
easily
about
until master level.
Yeah.
Easy.
You want to get better at blitz? Play bullet. Just kidding. Okay, so
That's probably true too. But e4 is again as ideas to get e5 in.
e4 is not necessary, but e4 is more typical when they played c4.
Yeah.
So bishop d3, c5, c3, knight c6, f4. It's another one of these move orders, and this is probably the critical line. Honestly, if you don't like this line, you can play knight f3 here, and it's a collie, and white's fine. But
yeah, we would stick to.
Let's go stick to the typical Stonewall stuff.
Strict on you guys, and then stick to program.
Yeah, so it's like some masters are going to complain here because black plays some accurate play and then and controls the light squares in exactly the right order. And I mean, if I knew my opponent was going to play this position as black and that he was going to prepare significantly at master level in slow chess, I wouldn't play this way as white. I'd play something else. But I've looked at Yakov's database. He has an equal score against other masters or even better score from this position. And this is the critical line. Like the Stonewall and Cheesecake is working everywhere else. The problem is before Yakov talks about all of White's ideas, I do want to have that disclaimer. But also, Black is going to try to fight for the white squares, and this is the one line where if he plays well, his light square control is enough to stop our attack. So, but let's talk about
some things that Black could do, and yeah.
All right, but let's talk about White's ideas.
Yeah, castle.
Knight d2.
We can show it. Castle. Yeah, it was played out castle. What we gotta do?
Like castles.
Yeah, and then it plays bishop e7.
Oh, that's kind of interesting actually. There's a game here that was played in the 2600 lost last year. I wonder what. So why would he take here? Why would a 26?
Well, just
I don't understand that.
Bishop doesn't. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay,
but okay, bishop e7.
Bishop e7.
Knight d2, knight david 2,
mm-hmm.
castle.
Castles.
And then you don't play h3. I think it's actually a really, really good thing to keep in mind. You don't play h3.
Mm-hmm.
You the reason why not to play h3. First, there's two reasons. You encourage him to go to f5,
which is what they want.
They want to play f5. Don't in chess. Don't encourage players to make good moves. Don't force him to good. Don't encourage them, and definitely don't force him to make good moves. Also, h3 is again.
It's kind of a loss of time.
Loss of time. Also, often in variations, we want a rook or queen to be on h3. Pawn h3 gets in the way. We don't. It doesn't help us. So queen e1 is the way. Get
queen
out
e1
the
with queen g3.
Yeah, I mean mostly knight e5 to unpin. It's not even there. It's just knight e5.
Yeah, knight e5's coming,
and that's fine. So queen. Let's say queen c7.
Queen c7.
Knight e5 is fine.
Knight e5.
Yeah, if bishop f5, so be it. Queen e2. If he goes here, you don't take. I think it's important to mention you do not take the bishop.
They have such a clamp on e4.
The reason is if we play that out, the bishop takes, pawn takes, and that's actually not good because even though he has double f pawns and the e4 pawn is not, the e4 square is not. He has it, and we have no light bishop. It's not good, so we don't take. That's important not to. And instead we go queen e2 to replenish.
Kind of also interesting might be like bishop e2 with g4, but that's maybe a bit much.
Gimmicky, though. I think it's a bit much. Queen e2 in this way, if he takes, we take with the queen. The queen will act as a light square.
Light rebuilder, so they didn't actually manage to dominate the e4 square as they wanted. But so.
And I think another variation they play c4. I've had this quite a bit. C4 is really cool because c4 is saying, oh, now you have to take. Bishop takes. Bishop, and then he's very happy.
He's clamped us down in the white squares.
He clamps down, but if we have bishop b1, this is kind of nice. And then
we're keeping the tension. We want them to play knight e4 and start taking things, and then
knight e4 doesn't work.
It doesn't work. So it's like they're both fighting for e4.
He's going to lose material.
C4 is hanging. E4 is weak.
Yeah, if he takes our bishop, we take back with it. We see that. Take the bishop, take it back with the rook, and then that big move, the one single most important move and square of the Stonewall is of course e5, but really e4. E4 will come next. Light, and it's an important push. I think that's very, very important for this for you guys to keep that in mind.
Right, so like
For this
e4, and if
course.
takes, we freed our
We could see
bishop.
it out. Let's say he plays b5.
b5, e4.
e4, and then again, he could either take or not take.
Like if we're given time, let's say they'd like to play some
Yeah,
slow move. It's
if
like
he does not take, we play e5 and followed by f5.
and now we're the ones with the light attack.
But if we address what f5 really is, f5 is fighting for light squares and tickling light, and he has to probably take. We take back with a rook, get our knight involved, get our bishop out, double the rooks in the f file. Pretty happy here. And again, our queen will probably remain most of the time on light to act as a second bishop. Okay, that's if he doesn't take. So if we play e4, if he takes, which yeah, I think they usually will.
This is an illustrative variation for show the ideas. It's not checked by the computer.
Bishop takes bishop. Go ahead. Bishop takes bishop. Rook takes. b5, e4, pawn takes.
Pawn takes.
Knight takes. Knight takes knight.
Which knight?
The knight takes e4. Queen takes. Knight takes e5. Pawn takes. This is a kind of a really important variation as well, where it looks like normal enough. In fact, white's doing very, very well because we have queen g4. Like, there's a lot of space, and the queen is very happy. And then we could play out a couple more moves. Rook to d8, rook a to d8.
That seems like a really interesting because I was thinking of bishop e3 and then doubling the rooks on the f file, but
queen g4.
Queen g4 is much
queen
stronger.
G4 with pressure on
really
h6
typical.
with tempo, yeah. And I think they play like king h8. They have to avoid. And at this point, it's kind of important. I actually would lean towards trading bishops. No problem, just trade bishops.
Because their bishop is
their bishop
better
is harmonious
with the colors, and ours is not.
Ours is not, and we could trade and be happy in the end game or late middle game where we just pile on. Alekine's gun, if you guys maybe have heard of the concept where you pile on. Two rooks and a queen on f7. That f7 pawn is really weak, and we could also look to attack the h pawn. We could just gang up. We could gang up on the swing the rook, and we play a few more moves. Rook f4. Whose turn is this? Plays a5, rook f4. He does whatever, queen c6, or rook f1. And again, king g8 he could play. We could play rook g4. And then we're almost winning by force. Now, I think h4, h5 is over. I think the game ends. I think that's it. h6, h4, h5, h6, queen f6 is made. Again, it's
just to show typical ideas and structural ideas.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of these games. I mean, it's hard to defend, really hard to defend. Like, you just lean on him. And again, what's fair to say is that white has no problems. A miracle, black draws. No miracle, black loses.
This is about typical piece setups, typical pawn structures, the sort of ideas that we usually play based on, like, Yakov playing 100,000 blitz games in this.
Yeah, well, not this variation, but in the Stonewall. Yeah. Stonewall and cheesecake. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I guess we end here, and I hope to see you in the cheesecake section. I hope you enjoy.